So a few weeks ago, I did a video on how to effectively grind the German tech tree in the most quickest and most cost-effective way. In today's video, we're going to be doing something different, and we're going to be doing the USSR. That said, without further ado, let's just get started. Of course, this video has been made possible for the friends at Discord. If you haven't liked, subscribe, or joined the Discord, I highly suggest that you do, but that's said, let's hit the ground running. In terms of hitting the ground running, we have the PPD-34. This is a very good SMG, and in my opinion, one of the best at the starting game. In terms of rifles, we have a really lackluster rifle in the Mosin M1907. That is a pretty bad rifle if you ask me. But in terms of the tanks, you do have a T-70, which is pretty good, although it does take a little bit of time to grind, whereas the Mosin M1907 and the PPD-34 you already start with, so that's great. In terms of planes, I highly suggest that you get the I-153. This is essentially a Soviet biplane with pretty good dynamics and speed, so that's good. That said, at tier 1, I highly suggest that you guys use the medic squad, the rifleman squad, the sniper squad, and bring a tank, which is either the T-70 or you can bring a plane, which is the I-153. So that's great. At tier 2, we have the PPS-43. This is actually a pretty good assault weapon, and in my personal opinion, I highly suggest that you use this. I also suggest for your infantry, engineers, and anyone who can use a bolt-action rifle, use the Winchester M1895. This is essentially a lever-action rifle, which is actually pretty famous if you're from the Wild West, but overall this is a very good weapon, the Winchester M1895. In terms of anti-tank weapons, use the M2 bazooka, and in terms of machine guns, use the Madsen, although I have personally feel like this is a very bad gun. Although other people that I respect have told me this is a very good gun, so depending on your playstyle, which mine is aggressive, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, depends on you. In terms of tanks, I highly suggest that you either use the T50 or the T28. The issue between those two is that the T50 has a 45mm gun but has a lot of armor, and the T28 has less armor but a 76mm gun, so go figure. In terms of the plays, highly suggest that you use the P40E1. This is essentially an American upgrade and then given to the Soviet Union with 250 kilos and 100kg bombs, of which you have 2 of the 100kg bombs. That said, in terms of squads, I highly suggest that you bring the radio operator squad, the machine gun squad, the assaulter squad, and of course the tank squad. I highly suggest that you bring the T50. That is my personal pick, or the P40E1 for your plane. In terms of tier 3, you have a very good rifle in the sense that the SVT-38 is a very good semi-automatic rifle. In terms of the SMG, I highly suggest that you keep using the PPS-43 because the PPSH-41 box, although good, is not that good. In terms of anti-tank weapons, get the Panzerfaust 60. In terms of the machine guns, you get a really good machine gun in the sense that the DP-27 is really good. In terms of tanks, you have something better, the T-34, or if you're very fancy, get the KV-1L11. KV-1L11 is a very good tank with a very good cannon and a very good hull armor, but it is rather slow, although not that slow as I come to find out. And the T-34 is a very fast tank, at least faster than the KV-1, and is a little bit lacking in terms of armor. But overall, if I were you, I'll just get the KV-1, because that thing is much more fun. That said, in terms of tier 3, I highly suggest that you get the assaulter squad, the radio operator squad, the machine gun squad, and if we're talking the tank squad. And in terms of tanks, I highly suggest that you get the KV-1. Notice how at this point I haven't even mentioned a plane, which I am going to get onto later. At tier 4, you also have very lackluster weapons. I highly suggest that you just avoid tier 4, but if you're a free-to-play player and if you want to grind tier 4, get the PPD-3438. That's a pretty good weapon. In terms of the machine guns, get the DT-29. You actually will be using this for all the way until the last tier, unless you want something different. In terms of tanks, I highly suggest that you get the T-3485E5T, and in terms of planes, I highly suggest that you keep using a tank. So that's that. And in terms of tier 5, I highly suggest that you use the AVT-40. That thing is very good. In terms of assault weapons, I highly suggest that you use the Fedorov. In terms of machine guns, you have actually 3 options, of which all of them are pretty good. The DT-29 from tier 4 that I said, the RD-44, which is a tier 5 weapon, and the Maxim Tokarev at tier 5. My personal suggestion is that, as a Soviet, you shouldn't be using the machine gun squad because although they are good, you have a better option in the Fedorov, and I highly suggest that you use that. In terms of tanks, that goes really easy, and that is the IS-2 1944, really good tank, and as a matter of fact, the Dushkut on top can actually take out some planes. On the other hand, the issue with the gun is the fact that it takes so long to reload. And while we're at it, let's talk about the planes. The planes which I have not talked about until tier 5 are pretty lackluster for the Soviets. That said, at tier 5 you have some pretty good planes. The IL-10 is a good bomber, the LA-7 is a good fighter and jack of all trades. The I-185 is a good jack of all trades, but I personally suggest the LA-7, although the I-185 does have a 250 kilogram bomb. The issue with the I-185 is that it takes some skill to use, whereas the LA-7 is much easier to use, so that's that. Overall, this is the entire Soviet tech tree, and if you're wondering what squads you should bring at tier 5, I highly suggest that you bring 3 assaulter squads, which is actually something you can do because you have that many assaulter squads in which you grind it, and while you're at it, an IS-2 or LA-7. And if Enlisted decides to make the I-185 better, then use the I-185. But overall, at tier 5, it's mainly your choice. That's it, that is all it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one.